First of all, vow is not a breakthrough in technology. It's not a smarter, more clever protocol. It doesn't then offer any improvement over any of the existing plumbing within within the cryptosphere, right? What it is it's a financial innovation. So let me go back for a second. Bitcoin has seen amazing adoption, right? Because it was the first. And that adoption is tiny. I mean, it's almost, negligible how much the percentage of people that have adopted Bitcoin in any way. And the reason for that owes to a lot of factors. Bitcoin was the first, so people didn't know about it. And when they learned about it, they were afraid, because people are always afraid of new things, right? And then on top of that, governments were properly scared of it, and so they ran misinformation, disinformation campaigns. They accused Bitcoin of of you being used as money for money laundering and for drugs, which was completely false. They accused Bitcoin of being a polluter of the planet for burning all this electricity, which is also bogus. It's a completely bogus claim. And they generally have tried to block its passage, because they own the banking system, and you can't buy Bitcoin unless you deal with the banks, right? Because you have to wire money to people that have the Bitcoin. It's all very complicated. But despite all of those obstacles, Bitcoin has achieved the status that it has. Vow suffers really from none of those obstacles. By now, all the governments in the world have taken a position with respect to crypto. They've either outlawed it, which I think there's maybe 4 or 5 of the most retarded countries in the world who have basically banned it. And then everybody else has legalized it. Germany was one of the first countries in the world to just legalize it, right? I've always personally considered the Germans to be particularly smart, in that they're very clean thinking, right? And they looked at Bitcoin and they said, well, it looks like a currency. It looks like a foreign currency, so we can treat it as one. And so as long as people pay their taxes in Germany, we don't care. It's legal, right? And then, of course, Holland followed, and Finland, and so on and so forth. And then there's governments like the United States that haven't really wanted to make a commitment to say, yes, it's legal, or no, it's not legal, because they rule through fear of the uncertainty of the legal position. So in the United States, a lot of the entrepreneurship has been hampered by the fact that there's no clarity as to whether this stuff is legal or not, or within what parameters it's legal, right? We have these opinions from Gensler, who is the head of the SEC, but they're just his personal opinions. I mean, I have an opinion too, right? So what? That doesn't make for enforceability or for proper statute or for anything like that. And so in the face of uncertainty, people tend to be cautious, which is reasonable, and so they do less, right? And so there's a lot of these obstacles, and Vow is fortunate in that it comes in to the ecosystem, to the crypto ecosphere, sort of rather late in the game, right? Not that it's late by any means. This whole thing is just nascent. It's just starting, really. We've taken a long time to just figure out the basic plumbing, right? How to get bits from one place to the other, how to do it in a scalable way, how to do it in a private, secure way, how to do it, how to align the incentives, right? What Vow does. So Bitcoin is born, and it's money. It's real money. But from an adoption perspective, to spend it, there are at least a couple of problems, maybe 3 problems. The first problem is, in order to spend it, I first have to go get it, and getting it is super difficult, right? The second problem is, if I got Bitcoin in my pocket and I spend it, a little bit of time passes and I realize, oh my goodness, I've made a mistake. I shouldn't have spent that Bitcoin because now it's worth twice as much, right? So there was the first commercial transaction in Bitcoin happened in New York City by a guy who bought a pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins. One pizza, 10,000 Bitcoins. That's worth $200 million today, right? So that's a $200 million pizza. The lesson there is you don't spend your Bitcoin ever. You buy the Bitcoin, you buy whatever you can, and you just hold on to it because across time, it'll be worth a fortune, right? So this also hampers Bitcoin as money because nobody wants to spend the Bitcoin, right? There's the third problem was really a problem with Bitcoin was of scalability. Bitcoin handles 7 transactions per second, right? That's kind of its nominative capacity. So which really means that as more adoption of Bitcoin comes, the network gets bogged down. And then what happens is the miners' fees go up. So it becomes very expensive to send Bitcoin, right? I remember a time when I wanted to send someone $20 and it was going to cost me $50 to send it. And at that point, it's not viable, right? So the bigger issue is when someone thinks about spending money, you know, I want to pay for this cup of coffee. Well, I can pay for it in cash. I can pay for it with my credit card. If it's a larger sum, I can do a bank wire, right? So what does Bitcoin add to in terms of value to the transaction? The answer is none, nothing. It's just not valuable for using it as real money, right? And this is where VOW comes in. And that, by the way, applies to all the other tokens in the entire crypto space, right? There's a million competing tokens, and all of them can be spent. Okay, but nobody wants to spend them, and B, it's difficult to get them. And why should I go through all this trouble when I can just pay for my cup of coffee with $1, with paper, right? None of them solves that problem. VOW is the first time where we restructure money in a way where it's actually valuable. And the value goes back to something very fundamental, right? I talk about this I think in my other video. The paradigm has existed for a long time that in order for me to get something from you, I have to give you something, right? And VOW has changed that structure, because now what happens is in any transaction, the two participants care about one thing, which is price. You as the seller always want a higher price. Me as the buyer, I always want a lower price. And VOW steps in as a liquidity implement in the middle, as a device of liquidity. And it says the price no longer matters. You know, I can walk into a Nike store someday and say, you know, I want a pair of shoes, you know, but I don't want to pay you anything. And Nike says, yeah, no problem. Here's your shoes, right? They will discount 100%. And that's a concept that just boggles the mind, right? People can't wrap their heads around how this can be. It seems like magic, right? And magic is always scary, right? Because magic is not predictable, right?
It's a black box. It's just unbelievable for normal people used to give their money for something. It's just that can't happen. That's impossible.
Exactly. It is impossible. We have 12,000 years of historical evidence that the only way that the transaction can happen is this way. And now someone is proposing, it seems like a scam, right? It's like, what are you talking about? How can you do this? There's a trick in here somewhere, and someone's going to scam me out of my money. But actually there isn't. And I can, you know, I will explain every part of it. Well, so when we say ecosystem, you know, ecosystems evolve across time. They come to have different participants and different roles. The VOW ecosystem ultimately includes everyone. It includes the insurance companies and the newspapers and the supermarkets and the gas stations, and it includes the the manufacturers and the warehousers and the distributors and the, you know, basically it's VOW is really an economic model. And it's an economic model that is predatory to the existing model, so that it will eventually subsume the entire planet. It's simply a better way of doing business, right? And when you have a better way of doing business, what happens is you have a competitive advantage, and those who are not part of the ecosystem will suffer, right? They will ultimately die unless they adopt the new way of doing things. And this new way of doing things is these new mechanisms are something that brings value not only to the merchants, the commercial side of it, but it brings incredible value to the public, right? As I've mentioned elsewhere, VOW is a deflationary factor, right? Which means that it makes things cheap for people to buy, and therefore increases demand for goods and increases productivity. And even though productivity in this environment of the World Economic Forum's thinking is a dirty word, right? They are seeking to destroy productivity, right? Because in essence, they're seeking to reduce the world population for reasons that only they can understand, that supposedly have to do with the health of the planet. The reality is that that's just not the case, right? Yes, we are making a mess in the planet. For sure, there's islands, there's something the size of Queensland worth of garbage floating in the oceans. It's unforgivable. It needs to be cleaned up, and we must not do it again, right? We just haven't been very good at managing stuff, but we can get better. The answer isn't to reduce population and to destroy productivity. It's actually to go the opposite direction, to increase productivity and to increase efficiency, and to do it with the care that we now have about the planet. So VOW is a stimulant to that creativity, to wealth, and to the well-being not only of human beings but the rest of the planet. We tend to talk about the commercial value of VOW, but in fact, the social impact of value, which is we rarely discuss, is huge. And I talked about this with Crypto Rich. You know, I talked about this mythical woman in Ohio who has to make a decision today. You know, she's living on fixed income. Her husband died, and prices are rising, and she has to make a decision between food and medicine, right? And that poor woman goes every night to sleep wondering how she's going to survive, right? The amount of stress that, you know, that her mind races about the things that she can do and the things that she must live with, and the obscurity, the sort of darkness of her potential in the future, right? We solve that. She goes to the pharmacy, pays for her medicines, and gets 100% discount on what she just bought, and all of a sudden she's got money for food, right? That night she sleeps better. And you know, if we think from a social perspective, and I don't know Germany, but I mean, I don't know the statistics in Europe as well, but I know that in the United States, depression is an enormous problem. People are depressed, right? And why are they depressed? Well, because well, to begin with, because they just don't have enough money to live in a decent place, right? They're living under bridges in LA, right? I mean, I live in this city of 12, 18 million people, and I'm fortunate to have a roof over my head, but there are many who are not. They're literally living in tents off the edges of the freeways and stuff. And when you have that kind of situation, you then have drug addiction, right? Because you have to relieve the stress somehow, right? Things are just going down. There's no future for you. Everything, you don't even have anything to eat. You're hungry. you're in pain, you were, you know, it was cold in the middle of the night and you were freezing half to death, and the only thing that you can do is find someone who will give you drugs, because at least they make you feel something. So, you know, at least they push you away from that misery, right? And that happens not just at, it happens not just at the bottom levels that I'm describing, it happens all throughout society, all the way up to even the very rich, right? I mean, so money isn't in itself the problem, is its agency over money. So think about the rich kids, right? Their parents are multimillionaires or billionaires, and the kids are depressed. Why are they depressed? I mean, they presumably have all the money that they could want and stuff, but the problem is they have no agency over the money. It's not their own money. They can't just spend it as they like. They can't do as they like. They live in these boxes where everyone controls you over stuff, right? And so that kind of worldwide stress, right? Not only the stress that we have created ourselves, but all the nations that we've gone and bombed and destroyed their homes, and all the refugees and all this kind of stuff. This creates an ethos of darkness in the world.
Yeah.
And Vow is in a position to make a very substantive difference to that woman in Ohio, right? Over time, the people under the bridge come out from under the bridge, right? Because as opportunities multiply, as we increase productivity, as we increase demand, those people are given an opportunity to come and participate in the system again. And the rewards mechanism gives agency, gives control over the money to someone. Just having the money in itself already relieves stress, right? Because you can then make the decision, you know, I don't want to spend it. Yeah, would I like to have a Coke? It's 50 cents or $1, whatever it is. Yeah, I would like to, but I'd rather hold on to the dollar because it makes me sleep better at night, right? And if I sleep better at night, I'm less angry with my children. I'm going to be more neighborly. I'm going to get along better with my coworkers, and the whole world just gets better. So that kind of impact on the social impact on the world, we don't even have a clue how to measure that, right? We don't even have mechanisms to detect the changes, but we know the changes will happen.
What was the first idea that brought you all together, and how did you start from the first idea into these, where you are now?
So that has kind of a long answer. When I first found Bitcoin, my thought was the big money needs to come into Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin needs, in order to grow, it needs to increase in price so that it calls attention, right? We want the little people to own Bitcoin, but in order for the little people to even notice it, it has to grow in price, and so we had to bring in the big money. And then, of course, I realized that the big money was never going to come into Bitcoin because it's too risky, right? The big money is all about holding on to the big money. They have very little risk tolerance. I mean, they would rather spend a predictable 3% loss per year, right, than potentially double their earnings, but also potentially cut them in half, right? That's just too scary. So I started thinking about mechanisms by which I could create asymmetrical volatility, right? We now have programmable money. So what kinds of rules can I create in order to create a blockchain where you cannot lose your money, right? And I elaborated on so, you know, because of my background in finance and in thinking about money and rules and things like that, I had a lot of thoughts, and I developed a system that I was very excited about. Right? It was going to be the first coin where you couldn't lose your money. That architecture crashed. One night, in the middle of the night, I was thinking about some use cases, and I started to understand that in certain instances, the whole thing kind of reversed itself, and then it would basically collapse, right? And I was crushed. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about this for probably 2 years, right? And I thought, well, the problem is that I'm thinking about this in terms of existing instruments. My original approach was essentially to create an options-based mechanism where every time that you bought the coin, there would be a put written against that coin, right? That would hedge or would protect the downward risk on that investment. So at that point, I realized, I'm trying to use existing instruments to build this thing. What if I just do blue sky thinking, right? Any rule, whatever, no matter how dictatorial, just solve the problem. So I came up with a second approach, and I was really excited about this, and I thought about it for a few months. And then again, at some point in the middle of the night, I was thinking. A lot of times at night, I don't sleep. I'm just thinking about things. And I realized, oh my God, what I've done is have created the very definition of a Ponzi scheme. So that crashed and burned too. And then I think I went through another iteration, and I was on my fourth iteration of something that actually worked when I came across VOW. An associate of mine, Michael, who is now my partner, he knew that I was very deeply involved in crypto, and he wanted for me to evaluate opportunities for him, right? And so he had me look at VOW, and as I'm reading the white paper, I realized, oh my God, these people have been doing exactly the same kind of thinking that I've been doing, and they have a system, but their system is better than mine. I had some problems that I had not been able to solve, and actually VOW did some things backwards from the way that I was doing. And I think also they were less aggressive than I was. I was trying to do too much in the same solution. Because of VOW's commercial experience, because of being in the rewards industry, they were more incremental. They just wanted to do this thing better, right? And that kind of led to the solution that I had, minus some of the complications that I had that were problematic, right? So I actually spent, I'm gonna guess, 6 months understanding the VOW mechanisms, talking to Bish, having read the white paper, reading through a ton of the documentation, having the discussions with the lawyers, all this kind of stuff. Because part of what I do as an economic modeler is I do surface attack analysis, right? So every system has a surface, so to speak, and a surface of attack, and you have to do some analysis to figure out how can you make it break, right? And I've spent quite a lot of time really trying to find the vulnerabilities in VOW, to figure out where it goes wrong, where I can break it, right? And I've come to understand it's a very solid system, right? It is a system that is so coherent that it is actually the candidate to replace our existing economic model. So in the process, of course, I've come to know Paul, who is really a great mind. He's a very bright thinker, and Bish, who is amazingly creative and very very unconstrained in his thinking. Right, he has really big thoughts, and I appreciate that about him. And of course, Michael, my partner, Michael's wonderful in that he is very focused. He's a guy to get things done, right? And so we have, and there's a bunch of other team members, but these are the people that I've mostly interacted with.
What I really loved about you when I first seen you talking is that you really had tears in your eyes, because it really touched you what happened when we met in Frankfurt. And that is something that is really different to other people talking about business, talking about things might be interesting for themselves or others. that it's just something, you know. For you, it's not just something. There's a lot of heart in it. So
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you talk about that, because I tend to think of myself as a very dispassionate person. But I mean, I remember when I was 16, I think, and I was reading about the treatment of the Congolese by the gosh, what was his name? Now I've forgotten. Bernhard, Bernhard II, right? No, I'm sorry, King Leopold of Belgium. The horrendous ways in which those people were treated, and I mean, I'm even choked up with emotion even today after all these years. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but that really affected me. That human beings could do these kinds of things to others, and it was kind of the beginning of my journey in thinking about governance, methods and mechanisms of governance. And of course, today with DAOs and blockchains, we have these wonderful rudiments for building governance systems, right? So when I think about promulgating the use of vow, promoting this ecosystem, I'm really thinking about the Congolese. I'm thinking about what Stalin did to 15 million Russians. I'm thinking about war. I'm thinking about all of the things that are done for systems reasons, right? I mean, nobody sets out to kill 15 million people, right? Just because they want to that day, right? That just doesn't happen that way. It's a systemic problem. They're trying to solve a problem, and the answer, it's a terrible answer, but it is an answer to some kind of problem. And so we need to be thinking about the problem solving space, right? The problem and the solution spaces for things. And I think that certainly fixing money is the first step. Bitcoin fixes money. Vow fixes the adoption of real money problem, right? No one's ever going to adopt Bitcoin. It's just not going to happen, right? Not on a global basis. I thought so for a long time. I was a Bitcoin maximalist. I believed in hyper Bitcoinization, the idea where Bitcoin reaches an escape velocity and the whole planet adopts it. It's not going to happen, right? Because Vow is going to get there first. Mm-hmm. Because Vow's got all of the right character. It was built for this. It was built for creating adoption.